Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Wright, human cartoonist extraordinaire, and welcome to our continuing series of videos, The Flight Plan to Space. S.P.A.C.E, the Small Press and Alternative Comic Expo, is coming up this weekend, June 10th and 11th, over at the Ohio Expo Center. And gearing up for that, we're going to be doing interviews as much as we can in the coming days to promote the people who are going to be there. And first up, we have Connor Lands, otherwise known as ErosOxide. Connor, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Absolutely. Tell me, where did that name ErosOxide come from?
So that's kind of a funny one for me. So for the longest time, I had the username, it was like radioactive guy or something like that. And when I started doing art, I wanted to do, I changed it to Radio Creations. And about 4-ish years ago, I realized that says absolutely nothing about me or my art or anything like that. And it was very hard to Google. So at that time, I was really into witchcraft and paganism, a lot of just like urban uses of that and like a modern take on that. And I had fallen in love with the mythology of the god Eros from Greek mythology.
Right.
And it kind of leaned into my love of mythology and mythos and legends and that sort of thing. And as a tribute to the fact that my old name was, radioactive something or other, I kept oxide because I honestly thought it sounded just kind of cool. And so ErosOxide stuck, and it just became something I fell really in love with.
Yeah. Hey, it works.
Definitely.
So we were talking a little bit before all this got started. This is going to be your very first space. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Very first one.
Have you attended the con at all, or
yeah? So last year, my good friend Javier Lavanino, he is an amazing artist. He draws Sex in the West. He was tabling last year, selling his first issue, and I, being a very good friend and roommate, decided to hang out with him at the table to sell and to check out the little convention space. And I just fell really in love with like the local comic scene and all the cool stuff that people were doing.
Yeah, S.P.A.C.E is awesome for that. It is
Definitely.
one of only two like indie comic specialized events in Columbus, and the fact that we have two is pretty awesome.
I know, right?
And that one always, even like, I love the I get messed up because we're also C3 CXC, which is the con that happens in the fall. I absolutely love that one, but just for the sheer number of indies that show up, S.P.A.C.E is incredible for that, and it's a great way for all of us to network. So welcome to joining the tabling on that too.
Thank you.
I was looking over your website in preparation for this. I like your description that your big inspirations are Keith Haring, anime graffiti, and clown vomit.
yeah, that's pretty apt, I would say.
I was enjoying a lot of the art. I'm a sucker for anything that's just CMYK. For any non-artists who happen to see this, the four typical printing colors are cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is K for some reason. And anytime I see artists who just make anything in just those colors, it always makes me happy. And looking over your stuff, I definitely see a lot of the anime aspect and things like that to it. What got you into art in the first place?
I mean, I've always been drawing since I was a kid. I don't know, I always had a kind of obsession with like really bright colors and really like cartoony aesthetics. I kind of chop it up to the fact that I was growing up on like Cartoon Network in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So stuff like Ed, Edd n Eddy had like a really big effect on my style.
I can absolutely see that.
Definitely. But when I was in high school, I really didn't have any direction with what I was doing. And when I was a freshman, I met a senior who was really amazing at drawing. And we liked a lot of the same shows, My Little Pony specifically, back when that was at its peak. And he was really supportive of me pursuing art and exploring further. And he kind of gave me direction in a time where I had like literally nothing else. And so I just started drawing, and I really leaned into cartoons and very like stylized art. I was at a very high peak of my obsession with anime at that point. So that clearly had an effect on it. And by that point, I had applied to go to CCAD here in Columbus. And
Mhm.
I guess the rest is history. I just kept going from there.
What program were you in for CCAD? Was it the comics program or?
I was I started in 2015 before the comics program started, so I was an illustration major at the time.
Mhm.
If I'm not sure if I would have done comics actually, because I really didn't know I wanted to do narrative work at the time. I just
Mhm.
like drawing characters. I thought I was going to do concept art originally, and then that dream just was like, no.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I started off wanting to do film stuff, and
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I graduated from my undergrad program in 2008, which was not a good time to graduate from anything.
Yes.
And on top of that, like everyone remembers this stock market crash that happened then. The Writers Guild had a strike, which we're familiar with right
Yep.
now. That's happening
Mm-hmm.
again. As did the I think it was the Screen Actors Guild also went on strike that year. So it was a terrible time to try to break into film.
I can imagine.
So yeah, I get immediately graduating and being like, oh, this isn't happening right now.
Well, the truth for me is actually I actually didn't graduate CCAD.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I went for 2 years, and sophomore year I had a very bad near the end of the year I was having a lot of things pile on at once. I got really sick.
Hmm.
Funny enough, I literally had to go to the Grant Hospital a couple blocks over, and they were like, your tonsils are so swollen you can't really breathe, but it's weirdly not strep throat, it's just really bad tonsillitis. And they're like, here, take this medicine that you have to eat to get it down. And I'm like, great, swallowing feels like shattered glass, that's fun. And as I'm just laying in my CCAD dorm in agony, I get a call, and it's like, hey, both your grandmas died at the same time, basically. And so I was like, I'm grieving, I'm sick, and I'm having a mental breakdown because it's art school.
Right.
And yeah, and so I ended up just dropping out my sophomore year. And for a while I was like, well, I guess that's the end for me and art. And I had some friends that were like, you need to come back to Columbus and start drawing again, because it feels like you're very depressed right now and you need community. So honestly, as much as CCAD got me here, I feel like the friends that I made along the way in the community and the art circles here is kind of what brought me back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Where were
Yeah.
you before Columbus?
I'm actually from like Northeast Ohio, Stark County, this little like kind of nothing town called Minerva, about 20 minutes out of Canton or so.
Hmm.
Hmm. It's fine. It's your stock standard small Ohio town. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. You know how it is.
Yeah. I'm actually a transplant from originally Virginia, so
Oh,
I'm still
wow.
figuring out some of the greater Ohio stuff.
Fair enough. I'm from the side of Ohio where we still have a little bit of mountains, like not a lot, but just enough.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely get you. Uh, quick shout out. Looks like our fearless leader Sydney Kitt's in the chat, I'm
Aw.
and is glad you had friends to help you through that rough time.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, well, first off, thank you, Sydney. Second off, like, yeah, no, like, would not be here today if I didn't have the friends that I did.
So you ended up coming back to Columbus, reconnecting with uh, the art community. When did deciding to do narrative work with comics start happening?
So I'd always been loosely interested in comics, video games, animation, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I didn't really have any direction on where I wanted to take that. I had been in my free time running these like sort of web comic type things. It's a thing called a quest. Basically, websites like 4chan or other of those kind of like image board type sites.
Mhm.
There's kind of a webcomic format where an artist will post an image along with like a written description of like, this is the scenario, here are your options and what you can do. And then people engage with that art by being like, I want to do this option or that option. And it's usually popular vote.
Th-
Uh,
So that's like I've definitely seen older versions of that kind of thing. Emma's Paint Adventures. That's the name I was trying to think of.
Yeah,
That kind of
Homestuck.
thing.
Yeah, Homestuck or Jailbreak are very
Yeah.
big name examples of that. But there's like a whole small community of people that still do that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
The website that I used the most was called it's at the pardon me. At the time, it was called TG-chan because it was where all the people on 4chan that wanted to do the quest type stuff went because they essentially got kicked off the website for like spam or whatever. Nowadays, it's called questen.org. A lot of adult stuff, but some really great stories are being told. But it was just an easy and quick way for me to start pumping out some narrative things. And it's when I realized, wow, this is like really fun. Telling stories with my art is like a good time. And so I started doing that. I kind of kept at it while I was doing illustration. And then a friend's relative, of all people, who was like the head nurse in a COVID ward at one of the hospitals up in Akron, contacted me and said, hey, there's like nurse appreciation day, and I want to do something for these nurses, and I'd like custom art. What kind of art do you do? And I said, well, I can do illustrations, buttons, I can do narrative art like comics. And she was like, I'd love for you to draw a comic talking about the experience of COVID and like what it was like for us as nurses to experience it. And so I made this 5-page comic called Tomorrow, which you can read on my Instagram. And it really kind of was like, wow, this is an art form that is really cool and I want to be able to do it. And I just kept going from there, really.
So your first kind of big project with this was applied cartooning. It was actually doing comics that are not only narrative, but based on helping other people and telling other people's stories.
Definitely. I think you could say that. Yeah. I have a perception of what COVID was like from my vantage point and from my friends, but getting to hear how, like actual people in the medical profession experienced it and like genuinely some of the trauma that they were facing, I kind of felt like it was really important to have that story be told, even if it was just giving it back to these people and saying, hey, we see you and what you're doing. Like, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that was a wild time for the medical community. My dad, thankfully, had already retired, but was a career doctor. And just one of the things that I'm kind of grateful for is that he wasn't in medicine anymore at that point. Like he was still he was ahead of the curve with a lot of things because he kept reading like the epidemiology reports and being like, okay, this is actually bad. Everybody do stuff.
Definitely.
But yeah, it's fascinating to me because most of the medical professionals I know are some of the most dedicated, willing to help people out there. And so many people burned out during COVID that it's
fully
incredible to me. Yeah,
definitely
a good story to tell. More recently, we were just talking about you are debuting a comic at S.P.A.C.E that is definitely not the same type of story.
Definitely not. Very, very different. Yeah, I'm currently going to be debuting Tinfoil. It's a short collection of it's a collection of 3 short comics that I wrote over the past couple months. It started with my comic My Brother Lazarus, which I submitted to Nosebleed magazine, if you've seen that on Instagram at all.
I think I have, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm trying to bring stuff up. But yeah, so it's a collection of 3 stories you've been doing over the last few months. Is this going to be the first floppy you've released besides the other thing you showed?
Yeah, it is actually. I've never really had printed work like this before, so this is like a very different experience for me. I'm really excited to show it off, though. Like, I've been nerding to all of my friends about this for like months now.
Yeah, it feels good holding it in your hand for the first time, doesn't it?
Definitely.
You're like, this is an actual thing.
Yeah, I actually have it like right here. Like, hey.
Oh, yes. Hold on. I'll make your screen bigger.
Hey, I'm just gonna hold it here. Get it out of the microphone. This guy right here. Like it's very much like a labor of love. I spent many a few night just haphazardly finishing this thing as best as I could. But I don't know. I'm really proud of it, and I think it really helped me start touch on some narrative themes I've been exploring lately.
Absolutely. Before we go too far off the other topic, we did get a little more from Sydney. The Columbus Scribblers, Brian Canini, was part of a comic anthology called COVID Chronicles. So many impactful stories from all different walks of life. Cannot recommend this anthology enough. Obviously, links are not going to work directly here. If you check out the replay of this on the S.P.A.C.E Facebook page, you'll be able to click the link in the chat. But yeah, looking at the art, I'm taking you're digital. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm very much a digital artist by nature.
Yeah. What do you use? What programs, what software?
Primarily Adobe Photoshop. That's kind of like my big baby right now. I got started in high school and never stopped, and by this point I'm too used to it to adapt to anything better.
I understand that feeling entirely. Are you stuck with the Creative Cloud?
Yeah, I am stuck with the Creative Cloud, and everyone hates it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I kept my student credential, my student rate for as long as I possibly could. But, I use too many programs from it. I don't just use Photoshop, so that's the nightmare. But yeah, what do you draw with? Like what hardware?
Good question. I have a PC. It's an HP Omen, I believe that's what it's called. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm so bad at naming like the specificities of what it is.
Yeah.
A lot of times I just have like very like, what can I find and plug into this computer and make art with? My current tablet is literally just a Wacom Intuos 2 that I believe my roommate Javier lent me because my other tablet broke. And
yeah,
I'm very much not picky about what I have. As long as it gets it done and I can make art, like it works for me.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. I was on Intuos for a long time. Great tablet, just annoying that you have to draw and keep looking at the screen for stuff to change.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of work done that way.
Definitely. What's so funny is I've been working on these tablets for so long that like it's very second nature to me. Like I tried drawing on a Cintiq the other day, and I was like, why does it feel so like uncanny is the best way I could explain it? And a friend was like, yeah, no, it's because there's no like break between your hand and the screen. And I'm like, but I'm used to the break.
Yeah, it definitely takes some adjustment. When I first got a tablet screen, I actually also this is my second monitor right now. But I got a Huion that I can draw on because it was the Wacom one wasn't out yet, which is the actual affordable Cintiq.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I like this better. And then I penciled out like a car in a couple seconds, and I'm like, okay, it's better. I didn't get into like Control Z over and over again.
Sounds about right.
I'm interested looking at your art because one of the main influences you brought up was graffiti, and I believe you looking at your art. I'm curious, do you have any direct exposure to graffiti? Is it an art form you've actually participated in, or don't feel like you need to incriminate yourself? But
so that's kind of funny. I want to get more into I guess trad graffiti is the way I like to call it. Spray cans, get more involved with the culture. Truthfully, the most I've gotten with graffiti is Sharpie markers. There was a moment where in downtown Columbus, there's a place called Pins, and it's just a cool kind of hipstery game pinball kind of bar. And one summer when I was living in an apartment down there, they were doing construction on a building nearby, and the fence around it was open for graffiti. And me working at a hardware store, I had an endless amount of Sharpie markers on me. And so I would be walking home, taking a 4-mile bus from uptown Hudson Street down to downtown, and I'd be walking by this fence every day, and I would just pull out a marker, start doodling, and just kind of embracing the idea of whatever I can't erase, I can't really sketch, I just want to doodle some big cartoony blobby shapes. And I started posting those on Instagram a little bit, and I like to think that that was kind of the starting off point for me getting really into that aesthetic.
That actually makes a lot of sense, because a lot of the flat, bold color stuff you have, that tracks from marker entirely.
Definitely.
Is there any other traditional stuff you've messed with besides marker?
I like playing around with materials, so I've kind of been messing around with all kinds of stuff. Painting wise, acrylic paint is usually my go-to. I love the flat, chunky, like very bold styles that acrylic can give you. Plus, acrylic is both fun and textural, and also it dries quick. Um, I recently started messing around with colored pencils because for the longest time I hated them, but I started finding these techniques where you can get these really awesome, like really bold and impactful color shifts and this really like wonderful grainy texture. Uh, in the past, I've messed with watercolors and chalk pastels. And on the digital side of things, I've done vector illustration as well back in college. I really just like messing around with materials. And even if they don't become part of my usual regimen, it's kind of like fun to just like have like a 3 week stint of just being into a medium.
Absolutely. Like I've tried to explain this to my dad just because he's always like, you should be specializing in what art you do. And I'm like, yeah, but there are benefits to like if I learn oil painting at some point because
Definitely.
it influences how I do everything else.
Mhm.
It's not like the STEM fields where necessarily you want to focus on one specific thing. Uh,
Definitely.
all art influences all other art.
Yeah, it reminds
Yeah.
me of Matisse of all people, and how he was, I believe, a watercolor painter for the longest time until eventually arthritis got his hands, and he couldn't hold a paintbrush, but he could hold scissors. And so the second era of Matisse was like these collage paintings. Like I think versatility and experimentation is so valuable in the art world.
Absolutely. Like, and that's always one of the scariest if something happens to your hands or your eyes
Mhm.
or anything like that.
Definitely, that's my biggest
Yeah.
fear in the art world.
Oh, hey, we've all been there.
Mhm.
I cut my drawing hand really badly earlier in the year and spent a couple of days just freaking out. And it turned out fine. I got a cool
Mhm.
scar, and that's it. Um, but yeah, like that's definitely one of the things that I can absolutely see. I always get inspired by artists that have dealt with that in some form or another. Like
Mhm.
I'm blanking on his name, the guy who did Gekige no Kitaro. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that comic.
I'm somewhat familiar with it. I don't think I've read a ton of it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Did you know the history of that guy?
Not really. Let me know what's up with him.
He was a World War II vet,
Hmm.
didn't start drawing until after World War II.
Dang.
He lost his drawing arm in World War II.
Oh God.
Yeah. So he completely learned how to draw, did his entire career with his offhand.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
actually really amazing.
I love that kind of stuff. I actually also knew a guy when I was at the Center for Cartoon Studies
Hmm.
who had to completely relearn how to do art because he ended up having cancer and it messed with the nerves in his hands.
Hmm.
So he kind of had to relearn how to do everything from square one and rediscovered making comics.
Man,
So
that's
yeah, it's always
I
great when we hear these things. It's like if anything happens, it's not the end.
definitely. I mean, I even if you've ever seen those Lime scooters around town,
Yeah,
I've successfully broken my dominant right arm twice on those things, once in the shoulder and once in the wrist. And
yeah,
I've fun fact, that's why I won't get on those things anymore. Because third time, I'm just losing the arm, and I can't afford to do that right now.
right.
But yeah, no, to some amount, I've definitely felt that where I had to be in a cast for God knows how long, like 6 weeks or whatever, and so I just had to start doodling with my left hand, and
Yeah,
I
I
can't
was about to
can't
say you can do great projects if you start switching hands.
I know I can't say I mastered it, but I got some interesting stuff in old sketchbooks now.
Oh, absolutely. That same friend, the one who had to relearn a lot of stuff. One of the things he found is he really liked doing his pencils with his offhand.
Oh, that's
Um, because
interesting.
it made things a lot more like fluid and loose, and then he'd ink with his dominant hand.
That makes a lot of
Uh,
sense.
yeah, you brought up the city, and one of the things I'm noticing in a lot of your art is that you mix like stylized photos of cities into a lot of things. Like I'm looking at one piece where I didn't catch it at first, but in like the clothing and hair, that's a crosswalk.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that comes from the sense back in college was
Hmm.
when I started exploring like really flat shapes. And I was really in love with pieces that implemented texture and like traditional collage. But
Hmm.
I was both impatient and bad at photography. So getting collage into a digital form was not on the table for me at the time. And so I started messing around with like adding like paper textures in Photoshop and just hitting the multiply layer to kind of give the pieces some depth. And I think that evolved into me taking like old, not even old, just like various photos and learning these wonderful techniques where I put them through like halftone filters and distorting them and uh, kind of treating them like a pattern or an element of other aspects of the piece. And I don't know, it just adds this fun kind of weird vintage twist that I'm like really obsessed with at the moment.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things, like, people make fun of Photoshop a lot,
Hmm.
and there's a lot to make fun of. But
Definitely.
one of the things that's best about it is there are 1,000 ways to accomplish the same thing. Like, it's very
Absolutely.
common for multiple artists to use Photoshop and have completely different methods and get basically similar results.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about it is that it's this wonderfully versatile medium where like
Mhm.
I take this very specific path to get that effect. And I know I have friends that could do it the exact same way in a different way that I would hate because it feels more analytical and less like artistic in that way or less
Yeah,
like freewheeling. Um, but yeah, no, that's what's so great about digital for me is just like you can play around with it for ever and you might get garbage, but you might find like a neat effect that nobody else really realized.
absolutely.
Mhm.
If you're all right with it, I'd like to show some of the images from your website just because a
Yeah,
lot of
go
people
for
know what
it.
we're talking about. But yeah, it's one of the things that was always funny to me. I figured out a lot of drawing before I went to school for art because
Mhm.
my background was writing.
Yeah.
Um, and when I ended up, sorry, hold on, I need to figure out where I'm what I'm actually bringing up. They changed
Good.
this interface, and it's throwing me off.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, I hate when that happens.
Uh, all right, I'm just going to share the whole screen and
Woo.
risk it.
Gotta do it. Do it for the
Yeah.
entertainment.
Oh, never mind.
Whoa,
Hold
oh
on.
God.
Yeah, look away if that's a prop. No, that's not what I meant to do.
Oh
Okay,
gosh. Oh,
apparently,
and it's
all right, I got to stop it. Got to stop it. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why I
oh,
did that.
we love raving.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, no one in the chat is photosensitive.
Yeah, no worries.
What's funny is right before I clicked that, I spotted the right thing I needed to click, and it was too late. I committed. There we
Uh-oh.
go.
Well, there we are.
Anyway, this is what I wanted to share.
Awesome.
Is I think that is awesome, and if you look closely, uh, that is a traffic pattern or like a crosswalk. It's not letting me
Hmm.
zoom, but yeah, and a lot of your work has the same kind of vibe. I think it's awesome,
Aw, thank you. I really appreciate it.
and I definitely see the texture stuff. Here's another example of the backgrounds getting used. I saw you did that also on the cover for the comic
Oh,
you just made.
yeah, for tinfoil.
Yeah,
It's kind of my favorite go-to if I just need like a quick background or like a good just like a good filler space. It just kind of has the perfect vibe that I'm looking for. So it's always a go-to.
I'll also tell you, like, these individual make stickers. Just do it.
I totally should.
I got a pretty good deal recently with Lone Crow, which I know you've worked with.
Hmm.
So yeah, uh, definitely worth taking a look for that. But yeah, a lot of what I'm seeing, you've got cool senses of style. You're doing a lot of mirroring. Are you actually like flipping stuff and things like that, or
So Photoshop actually has a symmetry tool that I like to use a lot.
yeah,
My personal favorite when I'm doing like mirror images or like reflection pieces, stuff like that. I like to make sure that the pieces to some amount overlapping, so that way it adds a sense of dynamism to it, and it doesn't just feel like I drew something and then I flipped it 180 degrees and then I put colors on top.
I just caught that this one's animated. I had to bring it up.
Oh yeah, that little running animation.
Yeah.
I'm still really fond of that, honestly.
Did you make that in Photoshop?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. I did a lot of GIFs in Photoshop. Honestly, I find it the easiest way to do it. But yeah, like, I've largely moved my stuff over to Clip Studio for a lot of
Hmm.
things, and Clip Studio was great. But I also feel like there are correct ways to do a lot of things, and you'll kind
Yep.
of figure them out. And it's nice with something like Photoshop where there's a lot more flexibility. And every
Hmm.
once in a while, you learn to improve stuff. Like, um, I heard people use multiply layers to do shading, and I
Hmm.
did it in the most complicated way I possibly could, where I thought you had to match the color underneath the shading, like on the multiply layer.
Oh
So
gosh.
I was constantly switching. It was a nightmare.
Oh no.
When I was in school and learned I could use one color, I nearly cried. I was like, you saved me so much time.
Oh my god. I mean, you're better than me. I abused that multiply layer to heaven and back back when I was like newer at digital art.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, we all
yeah,
did.
yeah, to the point that like I try so hard to not use like blending modes for shading anymore because it just sends me right back to that time. So I'm like, whatever, just like use the inks as shading. It works. It's better. Slap some halftones. It looks pretty, and you don't have to think about like math in your Photoshop anymore.
I was about to say, like, you do a lot of cool stuff with halftones, which I've never been able to get a handle on.
Halftones are just like my bread and butter at this point. I just
Yeah.
love I love the way that it adds both like a textural element, but also it kind of benefits the structure of the inks as well. It's just like this really versatile kind of pattern. And it comes in like a million different like tones and like vibes. It's just like so good.
It's one of the things that kind of gives a bit of a pop art flair to a lot of what you do, like
Yep.
some of the old Warhol stuff.
Pop art was such a like huge inspiration for me because it was kind of like the first art movement I learned about that was like it felt like contemporary and it felt in your face and like it was poppy. It had a kind of thing to say about the modern world we live in instead of talking about like more esoteric themes or I don't know, like concepts that were out of my grasp. Like it was more down to earth and saying, let's talk about topics or people or objects that we all know about and portray it in this like really hyper saturated kind of vibe which just immediately clicked in my head.
So you kind of had the same art school experience I did, where you were in class where they were talking about a bunch of people you never heard of and everyone else was getting excited.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I was like, I feel so bad because like, we were talking about like graphic novels or whatever, and everyone's talking about like Mouse with like Art Spiegelman. And I'm like, I recognize how important of a book that is, but it does not click with me narratively. It's not really my kind of book.
Right.
I was more in the camp of like Linda Berry.
Which is funny because that was basically my experience with Linda Berry.
Yeah.
I will admit I turned around on it. My big problem was I have a kind of automatic negative reaction to autobio or memoir that comes from non-comics. It comes from like books because so many of them read as listen to how great I am. And comic memoir does not do that. And it took Linda Berry's, 1,000 Demons? Is that
100 Demons? Yeah.
100 Demons. By the end of that, I was going, oh, I get this more. And it really opened up a lot of comics to me.
Definitely. I value Linda Berry immensely because she's someone that fully admits she's like, I'm not like a writer person. Like analyzing like the details of art isn't like analyzing the details of like literature is not her strong point. But even so, she has like this wonderful kind of melancholic but also nostalgic way of talking about things. And immediately like when she is so like down to earth of like my drawings suck and I'm not very good at analyzing literature but I'm going to do it anyways and it's good for me, immediately it was just like, why are we not talking more about this?
Yeah, I think part of the trick is with cartoonists, when they're self-deprecating, you believe them.
Exactly.
Because so many of us are self-deprecating and like have self-esteem issues, which we need to knock off.
Exactly. When somebody is too good at art and like when somebody's too good at art and when somebody is like a little too confident, immediately I'm like, great for you, can't relate. Just like I need somebody that thinks they suck at art and is like, my life sucked and I'm here to tell you why you should keep living anyways.
Now, oh man, now I'm trying to think of other examples of that. Because honestly, most artists I've talked to don't like their art. It's just a universal
thing. Yeah.
There's a big thing with imposter syndrome. Like I have it. Every artist I know has it on some level.
Yep. And it sucks because everybody is like, I'm on team like everybody's art says a lot about like how they view things, or like how they the angle in which they perceive the world.
Mhm.
um and I think that even when it's like I don't draw certain things not for any important reason, but because I don't like drawing those things, or like I'm lazy and I don't want to learn how to draw those things. I think that still says something about them as a person, and like you as an artist will never acknowledge that about yourself. You know what I mean?
I do. Like one of the things, the first thing I thought of is one of my great shame panels from a comic, where it was a horror comic I did called The Man in Green that all
Mhm,
took place around a theater. And there was a scene where I was showing like a packed theater
mhm,
with, and like from looking down and had the balcony.
mhm.
And this was, I fell into the digital trap of going so, way over detailed in something that no one's going to be able to notice
Yep.
because, yeah, you're zooming in too much. Uh,
Yep.
I I drew every person in that balcony.
Oh God,
And
no.
what's great is I threw
Oh,
in all kinds of references to other comics, friends of mine, celebrities.
yep.
There's a robot as one of the people. No one's going to notice that.
Nobody's gonna
But
notice.
what's great is then we get to the part underneath where I knew we could go simpler, and you can actually see the exact moment where I said "screw it," and just like scribbled the rest.
Listen, you're like the exact opposite of me though, because like I respect that amount of dedication, even if like it ended up being like, whatever, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah,
But like for me, my style is so graphic and so flat that half the time I'm like, when I'm drawing panels, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to draw something complicated. What if I just make a panel that's nothing but text, and I do 3 of those, and then I do somebody smiling at the bottom, and I have to keep pulling myself back and be like, this is a visual medium. Maybe use a little bit more art, a little less words.
no, I totally get that too. That's more like how I draw now.
Mhm.
Um, like for some of my projects, I've definitely like do push and challenge myself. My main project right now is a 4 coma. Like,
Oh, nice.
so I'm just doing 4 panels once a week, all the
Mhm.
time, and the format never changes. So that's really easy, except when I decide to do a long form story and and go crazy and like break panels and stuff like that.
Oh, that's so good
But
though.
like most of the time, I'm just doing the same basic thing. I literally did a comic start to finish today because I was due tomorrow and I hadn't done it yet.
That is a
But
mood.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, it's we all have those lines as creators, and half the trick is learning to sell yourself anyway.
Yep.
Keith in chat brings up that his strategy is to work a bit, walk away, and then come back to give it a look and move on. Uh,
See, yeah. I
that
feel
doesn't
like
work for you?
I feel like I should try that, but I'm so much a person of like, as a very ADHD person, if I walk away, sometimes I don't come back. So
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah, I just have to sit down and engage with this thing for as long as my brain will let me. And then once my brain's like, you are going to die if you keep doing this,
yeah,
then I'm like, okay, maybe let's go grab dinner or something.
yeah. My problem is I'm old, so if I stand up and walk away, I need to go lie down for a bit, and like because my back is saying you were sitting for several hours and everything hurts.
I feel that,
Also,
honestly.
Sydney, the artist deadline, 1 hour.
Listen,
Uh,
I will not confirm nor deny whether or not one of the comics in tinfoil was written. It's like 3 pages in one day, sketched to full final inks and renders,
mhm.
and there were several all-nighters done in that span because I should have worked earlier, didn't work
Yeah,
earlier, and now we're here.
I'm guessing the answer is no based on that. But have you ever tried a 24-hour comic?
Oh God, no. I I know I should probably. I don't know. Like I feel like I should because I need to know what that suffering is like. And
Mhm.
I'll let it flavor my I don't know, my artistic palette and relate to all the other psychopaths that decide to do that to themselves as well.
I always like to encourage people to try it at least once. And
Hmm.
like, if you can't do that, there are other challenges that are easier and things like that. But the thing I came to realize the first time I tried to make a 24-hour comic, it took me 11 days.
Oh boy.
Um, And the thing that was crazy to me is at the end of that, I realized I have a 25-page comic, and it only took me 11 days to do it. And like most people I knew were always talked about, oh, I'm afraid to do like longer than a 12-page comic and things like that. All of a sudden, it was like the pressure was way off. I credit being able to make a graphic novel to the fact that I did that. So I always encourage everyone to at least try it. Worst case, you fail and it takes longer to make a comic.
I mean, honestly, that's fair. Like, I guess, you know what? Maybe after S.P.A.C.E, after things have settled down a little bit this summer, I'll just sit down and I'll be like, we're going to make a comic in 24 hours and we'll see how much I can get done.
Yeah. Just don't overextend yourself. Come up to do it. Simple story. We're getting questions about that, actually. What's the formula? Write it out, then draw. Write as you draw. Storyboard it ahead of time. What was your technique? I have now done 5 attempts at 24-hour comics, and 3 were successful. I like to try to do it every year, but that's hard. But I changed how I've done it every time. The times I failed, it's because I bit off way more than I could chew and went too complicated. The first time I did a fairly complicated, like it was a straightforward horror story. Like that's the other thing. I had ideas for what I wanted to do. I didn't write a thing until that 24-hour period started. So the writing happened during that too. But what would happen with it is you do. I actually tried to do it in nib, which I was not great with.
Nope. You've lost me immediately.
Exactly. Like that got me definitely in trouble. The first time I was successful, I actually did brush and mostly black ink and then digitized things. But I went with a way simpler story. It was just a kid having nightmares. And I did write that stream of consciousness pretty much. I just quickly thumbed it out. How do the nightmares change in each page? It's like I did thirds of a page. I didn't even think about panel layouts. Dang. If you do like stuff like that simplifies your process, it's doable.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Anyway, getting back to you.
Me?
Little you, that's right. Oh, but you also had some art from tinfoil you wanted to show us, right?
Yeah, sure. I can pull some stuff up real quick. Hopefully I don't knock my my camera off the stand again. Let's see. Entire screen. I don't think I have anything, let's see, particularly weird. Let's see, that'll work. Share. All right. Believe it says I'm sharing now.
You are sharing. It is currently, I can tell it's currently showing all this, so you're probably going to want to switch to the other thing first.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, we'll get the recursive thing.
Oh, not the recursive thing. Let's see.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. I'll bring
awesome. Yeah. So this right here is the cover of tinfoil. It shows my little mascot girl. I'm still working on a name for her, but she's kind of the main face of it. Just this, like, as I describe it, anonymous shadow girl who really likes fashion. Fashion's a really big inspiration for me. So, but let's see. I'll pull up the little info page right here. This is just the beginning screen. It shows another, little sketch of her, as well as some information about, where this comic came from, some inspirations for it. A big stuff for me is, like, as I said, like Japanese denpa media, urban fantasy, and like a retrospective look at Y2K tech. I honestly just wanted to show this because I drew this in like 20 minutes. And I'm honestly so proud of this girl.
I'm having so much fun with the textures on it.
Yes, I freaking Victoria Douglas. Victoria Douglas made this pack of textures that she scanned from the inside of like letters, like bills and that sort of thing. And
yeah,
I immediately turned those into brushes and I just started slapping on everything that I have.
Nice. So you use your own brushes too?
Yeah, I like to use a lot of halftone brushes. Sometimes I find texture brushes that I like. I usually don't make them myself, but when I do, like, it's probably because I've just fallen in love with the texture of it so much.
Do you have the Kyle Webster's or?
I do have the Kyle Webster's. The main brush that I use to draw with, it's the Happy HB brush.
Nice. I
Yeah.
used to clean comics a lot,
The
but yeah, I also like that you draw with white because that always messes with my head when I try to do it. Like
mm-hmm.
the line art being white, great use of dark space, great use of texture.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Are does the fashion change throughout the thing too? You mentioned that's a big deal.
Yeah, so what I want to do honestly is that every time she shows up in some amount, probably going to be the cover and the like welcome intro, like what's up page
Hmm.
for each issue that I plan on doing. I just like to do some, sketches of her in various outfits, whether that be more like kind of sweet vintage clothes like you see here with that kind of like streetwear twist, or something a little more experimental or cutting edge or subversive. I think it's just fun to have a mascot I can dress up like a doll.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely get that. And like
Mhm.
looking back at the art on your website, there's a lot of different clothing styles showing up.
Aw. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, like, I personally, like, find fashion to be this amazing way in which we can, like, communicate, like, who we are or, like, what you're about or just, like, your general vibe, without ever having to say a single word, and I think, like, the most fun of character design is just putting them in fun outfits and being like, "What does this say about them?" So,
yeah,
always
absolutely.
loving it.
And that's hard to do for a lot of people. Like that's a
Mhm.
gift you got because like I have the worst habit for me is I want to put everyone in a t-shirt and jeans.
I used to be like that, and then I found, like, fashion blogs on Tumblr, and I was like, "It's game over. I need to start drawing cooler outfits."
Yeah, I need to figure out how to even approach that.
Mhm.
Fashion blogs on Tumblr, that's actually an interesting idea.
Definitely. Fashion blogs on Tumblr or Pinterest or just go on the Vogue website and just, like, get a temporary membership to just, like, look at some runways that are going out right now. My current favorite fashion brand is Moschino. They make the weirdest clothes imaginable. Let's
Or
see.
things for me to research. Awesome.
I
Yeah,
know, I've got
one of the
uh
things that's been affecting, making me want to do more art stuff is I recently started replaying Persona 3. You,
Yes.
yeah, you know those games.
I
They
love
have the
Persona.
they like whenever they are not in their school uniforms, I always look at them as like, are like Japanese teenagers just the most fashionable people on the planet? They look
E
amazing.
Even when they're in their school uniforms, they still look cool.
Oh yeah,
Like,
three had a bit of the giraffe neck syndrome, but
yep, a little bit. I mean, like, Persona is yeah, no, Persona weirdly has the best fashion sense of, like, any, like, JRPG I've ever seen. And also just the funniest amount of, like, you're in a school, you probably shouldn't be allowed to just wear, like, an entire hoodie under your jacket, but okay, I guess.
yeah. Well, I'm glad they did because otherwise everyone would have the exact same outfit, and then it would just
Eggs.
be yeah.
Exactly. All right. Let's see. This guy, let me
Oh,
full screen that.
let me
Uh
bring that back up.
yeah. This is the first page to the first comic in Tinfoil, My Brother Lazarus. This was initially a submission to Nosebleed Magazine, a really cool indie magazine that just got started in town. It's really inspired by like Y2K tech and like the era of like flash games.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, it kind of started from just a silly joke of like, what would happen if somebody used like witchcraft to put their like dead little brother inside of like a flash game, like a Tamagotchi style flash game. And
So it's the
I
comic version of like half of the Five Nights at Freddy's inspired thing right
A
now.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm not even a big Five Nights at Freddy's person, but I just thought it was like such a dumb, stupid idea, and then I got sincere with it as I kept
Yeah.
going.
So,
Oh
how
my
much experience do you have with horror?
writing it, engaging with it, like
Hmm.
um
All the above.
I I haven't written a lot of horror. It's not a genre that I like necessarily felt comfortable in
Hmm.
because to me, I have trouble making things scary in like a visual sense.
Hmm.
And honestly, to that extent, I don't know if I necessarily would call this comic horror, more like psychological introspection, but
Mm.
I do really love horror or like darker aesthetics and themes. I like the quieter stuff, which is why I'm not so good at like horror video games or movies. Uh,
Mhm.
but like, Junji Ito is like big love of mine. Like I love the way that he subversively twists like the average everyday into something terrifying. Like Uzumaki is one of my biggest writing inspirations. Um
I'm
so
really happy about this. I love Junji Ito.
he's my favorite guy. I just love him so much. He's such a sweetheart and he's just like he's got such a weird little brain.
Yep. I like Junji Ito's that guy on my list that of people that I really wish I drew more like. I really love
Yep.
how he does stuff.
Yep.
Um,
If I could draw like him, I swear to God.
yeah, it definitely got me that, and meeting Steve Bissette got
Mhm.
me to start experimenting with horror early on. And honestly, it's one of the things I periodically go back to because it's a lot of fun making horror stories. You don't have to think about them as much. That's really nice.
Absolutely. I think
Um,
you just need to play on what, like, it's kind of that idea of like distorting what is frightening to you and like breaking down why it scares you.
oh yeah, my goal for a lot of time in grad school was to make comics where when people opened a panel, I could hear an audible. Ugh!
Yep.
That's such a great feeling when you get
Oh,
that kind of reaction.
definitely. I think I've got one last page to show real quick.
Okay.
This is from the second to, I think this is the last comic in it, called Blockchain Chain Block. A wonderfully stupid name. Um, this is the second page. It's a comic that talks a lot about I don't know, commodification of love and what we would do for the sake of being desired by other people. And it also has, I would argue, the most references to media that inspired it in the first place. Specifically the line "serialize yourself" right here.
Yeah, I'm mildly obsessed with this page. Hold on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Quick off topic. If anybody has questions they want to ask, we now would be the time to post them in the chat. We'll go into them in a minute.
Yep.
But yeah, one of the things that I really love is the uh, very top, just those three panels of the eyes. That is
Hmm.
such a comics thing that
It
like is so
really
hard to
is.
capture in other media. Like tiny movements, tiny details like that. Um,
Aw.
like it kind of makes me think of a lot of people actually don't like how he draws, but Scott McCloud has a
Hmm.
great thing on basically mixing emotions
Hmm.
in making comics, and you can see it in a lot of his stuff. You captured like these super subtle little changes in people's expressions that is so hard to do in any other medium,
Oh.
and just having the eyes go around like that, I just love.
I really appreciate it. I was actually really unsure of those panels when I drew them. I was like, it feels kind of empty, and I'm not quite sure if it's like really communicating what I'm trying to do. But like, you really just made me feel a lot more confident about this page.
Oh yeah, like one of the other things that's great about it, and this is something that digital people sometimes get into a trap of,
Hmm.
is abusing copy paste for panels like this. You
Yep.
didn't. You redrew it, and you also did the textures over again, or you did one long texture and just split it. But
I did it by hand. Yeah.
yeah, that doing like taking just that little bit of extra work really can make something sing, and it's great.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, and also like reading this, I I do a lot of horror, and I think serialize yourself and then seeing like the surrender click, I actually did get a chill response from that. So that is a
Wow.
good sign.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah. This is like issue specifically of Tinfoil. It's very inspired by an anime that I watch called Serial Experiments Lane, which was this 90s introspective look on the internet and what it was going to become, which it got it weirdly right, like very on the money of like we would be having, cell phones that could connect to the internet, and that the person that we are online is essentially completely uh unseparable from the person we are in reality, and that those lines are very blending in our society.
mhm,
And so I kind of took that, I suppose, to a bit more of a literal sense, where a lot of my comics have to do with like taking like technology, or like taking the internet, or like browser culture,
mhm.
and pushing it to an almost supernatural level of like literally putting your brother in a device, or literally sacrificing humanity for the sake of love in a digital sense. And it's just like this very, I don't know, I feel like the phrase serialize yourself is just like this weirdly haunting phrase that I've been obsessed with, like rewriting on all my comics.
I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of those. It's a great horror line.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Black Mirror.
Yeah, very much Black Mirror. Even as much as I like to make fun of Black Mirror, it's very Black Mirror.
Yeah, I never got into that show, but it is like, I understand at this point the cultural reference of it. And I love anytime people make fun of it. It's like, here's a normal technology thing, but spooky.
Yeah, I like to I like to say my comics are a little less Black Mirror, a little more like Love, Death, and Robots.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I like I think I like to push it to a weirder, more surreal element, I suppose.
All right. We are getting to about the hour mark, so let's start looking at some questions.
Totally.
We've got from Sydney, if you could only read one comic for the rest of your life, which one would you choose?
Oh, that's really hard. Oh no. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a second. Gosh. Off the top of my head right now, if I had to choose just something that would make me happy forever, like to read, it would probably be, I believe Benji Nate is their name. They write a comic called Girl Juice, which is just the funniest, stupidest comic ever. It's just about a bunch of like 20-something-year-old like girls living in a house and just like being like kind of like horribly stupid and gross together. And it's brings me so much joy every time I see it on Instagram. So probably that one.
It also, like, there's the important question, like one volume or like an entire comic run.
That is super duper fair.
Because entire comic run, I might go with Ozymandias.
I love Ozymandias so much.
It was one of the main inspirations for my webcomic.
Yes.
So that would be a possibility, but it doesn't say I can't watch as much anime as I want, and the anime is very good. So there's
the anime is very good.
Honestly, other weird answer, I might go with a superhero comic, The Archer's Quest by Brad Meltzer. One of my favorite graphic novels. But
definitely,
yeah.
If I had to say like one like graphic novel, just like one book, not like an entire series or anything like that, I feel like I would go for Brian Lee O'Malley's Seconds specifically. Seconds is probably the first proper graphic novel I ever read, and it fundamentally changed my brain chemistry.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I absolutely get that. For me, that was probably Mouse. Like, Mouse definitely was a big one for me.
Yeah.
But no, also up there was Understanding Comics, because
I actually just requested Understanding Comics from the library I work at. So
have you read it before?
I have skimmed it before. I am notoriously bad at reading books. Funny enough that I work at a library, but
no, I absolutely get that. Which library do you work for? One of the ones in Columbus?
Yes, I do. I work at the Northside Library up on High Street in the Short North. Really cool branch, amazing people. Support your local libraries. We're currently doing our summer reading challenge.
Absolutely.
Also, fun fact, Columbus Metropolitan Library is currently celebrating its, let me see if I can remember this, its sesquicentennial, 150th anniversary. This year was 150 years since we were invented, before light bulbs were around, actually.
Fun fact about the Columbus Metro Library, if you have a self-published graphic novel or anything like that is available through online services. I did mine through Ingram Spark, so they distributed on Amazon and all kinds of services like that. I have gotten multiple self-published books into the Columbus Library system. They bought them.
Definitely, yeah. We're always looking for local art.
And it really is helpful. Like, I've gotten them there and in the Westerville Library, which is technically separate. And I end up going to Westerville more often because I have a lot of friends up there. But
fair.
The fact is, like, love them both. Columbus bought more.
That's so valid.
Yeah. One thing I also like to tell people who are library fans, because it's a kind of embarrassing and funny story about me. Growing up, like I went to the local libraries up through like elementary school and then pretty much exclusively used school libraries. So I really wasn't tied into the library system at all until I moved to Columbus in 2017. And then I finally got a library card, and I only then realized that library cards are free.
Yeah, you didn't know
I didn't know.
It's like a fundamental aspect of library cards is that you don't have to pay for them.
I assumed you paid an annual membership like everything else in life.
How did you? I feel bad now because I get a lot of customers that come in and they're like, do I have to pay? And I'm like, why do you think you have to pay? What library have you been going to?
Yeah, like if you don't have experience with it, libraries are incredible.
They're
They're
very
paid
cool,
for through
very free.
taxes. You don't have to pay anything for it. If you don't return a book by the deadline, usually they're okay with it.
Yeah. Oh, also, I need to bring the so they're talking about
Mhm.
libraries. I want to bring this up. I don't know when exactly, but there is going to be a vote on whether or not the Columbus Metropolitan Library can keep the levy that we have right now. The levy being that a certain percentage of property taxes in Columbus go to the library as a way of funding.
Mhm.
And the reason that CML is so prolific right now is because of that funding. And right now, libraries are kind of the last front of like non-censorship in literature and like progressivism in the community and like just a lot of resources that help a lot of people. So like if you live in Columbus and you want to vote on that kind of stuff, like whenever it comes out, like please vote like yes on the levy. It's just a very big help.
That's definitely a good thing to get out there, because
Absolutely.
coming from outside of Columbus, and I say this as non-politically as I can possibly manage,
Yeah.
the way voting works in Columbus is insane.
Oh yeah.
Because like I will sometimes have to look up guides to get to help because you're voting on so much stuff, and the guides don't cover everything.
They don't.
By
They
the
never
time I
do.
get there, I'll find out that, like half the stuff I don't know what it's actually about,
Yep.
and that is not the case anywhere else I've lived.
I don't get it personally. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I've just recently started getting more involved in like voting and
Yeah.
activism, that sort of stuff. So like you're preaching to the choir in that regard.
But yeah, in this particular levy, I assume the levy will reference the libraries in some form.
It should, yes.
Yeah. So whenever you guys spot that in the endless deluge of things you have to vote for in Columbus, vote yes.
Yeah. Vote yes.
All right, we've just passed the hour mark, so I think it's a good idea to start wrapping it up. Tell us where we can find you on the internet.
Absolutely. So I am at ErosOxide on pretty much everywhere. I have a Twitter. I don't use it very much. I'm more active on Instagram. You can also find me, ErosOxide.com. That's my portfolio site. You can also reach me via email there. I've also, where am I? Am I anywhere else of significance? I'm trying to think. I think those are my two big ones right now.
You also have the link tree you mentioned.
I also have the link tree. Link tree is really cool. It links to among my other websites, it also links to the card game Popularity, which I did for a friend recently. I did the art for that. So if you like supporting like queer, more adult, I would say, oriented art and board games and that kind of stuff, like check that out. It's cool. And eventually, if you follow me on Instagram, I'll probably post about where I'm updating tinfoil. Plan on updating that online at some point. So yeah.
Absolutely. And tinfoil is going to be debuting at S.P.A.C.E this weekend.
Yes, it is. I'm really excited.
Yep. As a reminder, part of what we're doing all these interviews for is the Small Press and Alternative Comic Expo happening this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, June 10th and 11th, over at the Ohio Expo Center. It is an absolutely amazing event, and desperately needs your support. One of the big things, the last few years have been incredibly tough on indie cons. And it's part of why we're actually doing this thing of support, because S.P.A.C.E has had a rough time. They actually lost their original venue. They've been bounced around a little bit, hit with some new rules and restrictions. And it is one of the things that people outside of Columbus and outside of Ohio talk about as a great thing about Columbus.
Yep.
Like everyone, when I was at comic school in Vermont, talked about space, and it is something that I think we need to support. And there's a lot going on that weekend. There's an anime con that's having its first year at the convention center. There's an art festival downtown. We understand people might have other commitments. If you can find the time, come out and support your indie comics community.
Definitely.
People like Eros here, people like people like me, please keep in mind. And Columbus Cartoon Coalition will also have a table with a rotating selection of our members selling their wares. So yeah, please make the time, come out and support your local community.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up. Anything else you want to add?
Not much. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me and letting me, air out my opinions on various topics of fleeting relevance.
Hey, that's how these things always end up going, and it's always fun to get a peek behind the curtain on this stuff. One other thing I need to mention before we end, we haven't gotten it officially posted yet, but we are going to have another interview tomorrow featuring Danielle Dean, starting at 7:30 on this same channel. We keep an eye on the Columbus Cartoon Coalition social media. We will be announcing it once we have the official links set up.
Nice.
And the interviewer for that is going to be another member of the executive board, Ethan, who handles a lot of the normal stuff, but he will be taking over because I will not be available. Anyway, thank you all very much for joining us. Hope to see you at Space next weekend. And until next time, rock on, guys, and never stop drawing.
Bye.